Welcome to the show, guys. We're continuing on with the Impact series. On the show today, we've got Patriots Global. Colby, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
I'm excited to dive into some Patriots talk. And can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Because I'm bringing on beat writers, I'm bringing on ambassadors, I'm bringing on influencers on that sport. I wanted to pick you because, again, I had that relationship with you a while ago. We talked about this. We've vlogged before, I should say. I had you on, so I really want you to dive into the Patriots today, but also a little bit about yourself, about your channel, how things have been with your channel, because we haven't talked for about a year and a half or so. So let people know who you are, what you do, and we'll dive right into the Patriots Outlook.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been a while. I think the last recap we did here is probably like 2020 with the whole pandemic and everything going around, and it's been quite the change for the Patriots since then. So, but obviously, with that being said, I do cover the New England Patriots. I cover everything Patriots. Looks inside the locker room. I give you looks at highlights. I give you coverage on minicamp practices, OTAs, training camp upcoming. I'll be in Boston in a couple of weeks, so I give you coverage on everything New England Patriots. Obviously, you can find me at Patriots Global on YouTube. Everything else for my Instagram, my TikTok, my Twitter, all of that for live updates will also be in my description boxes.
Yeah, big YouTuber there in regards to the Patriots. So that's exciting, living and breathing the team. So again, this is an interesting division this year. I just had the Jets guy on, Ian. We were just talking right now. It's going to be an interesting division. I had the beat writer on, the direct Buffalo Bills beat writer on. Obviously, Buffalo Bills feeling pretty confident going into the season. Again, we want to talk about obviously the outlook, but we also want to talk about kind of the fantasy impact. That's kind of the main focus of me, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
in regards to volume distribution, how it's going to go. And I got to be straight with you. Other than Mac Jones, right? I'm going to lay it on the table. Other than Mac Jones as a backup quarterback with some upside, I'm fading all New England Patriots players, unless you steer me otherwise in regards to as we continue talking about this. But let's talk about Mac Jones, particularly having a safe, solid year in his rookie year last year. What are some expectations for him? Do you think he steps up in regards to fantasy production, in regards to maybe running the ball a bit more? Is he going to get some rushing touchdowns? Is he going to be throwing more? Is his consistency? His ratio wasn't bad, but is that going to go up this year? Let's start with the quarterback position. How does this situation look with him?
Yeah. I mean, look, Mac Jones is probably going to average out rushing wise the same way that he did, last year. It's going to be more than Brady, but don't expect Josh Allen. Don't expect Lamar Jackson. It's not going to be anything like that. He's going to give you a little bit more than Tom Brady did, but that's not his cup of tea. I think this is going to be a much better passing year for him. He had a pretty dang good freshman year, especially compared to the other 2021 quarterbacks.
Yep.
So I'm expecting that big leap from Mac Jones, which that's a lot being said, because I think a lot of times we see rookie quarterbacks go out, have a good season, and then that sophomore slump kicks in. But I'm not expecting that from Mac Jones. So far from what we're seeing from OTAs and minicamp, he's staying an extra hour after practice. He's the last guy on the field, and he's specifically working on the deep ball. And it's showing from what we've seen from practices that were open to the media. He's really working on that deep ball, and these splash plays that we're seeing are splash plays down the field. You're not seeing a lot of dink and dunks like you did this time last year. But at the same time, you have to remember Mac Jones at this time last year wasn't the starting quarterback. He was really the starting quarterback a couple of weeks before the start of the regular season, because he was still going up against Cam Newton. So he's being careful with the football. He's really just trying to win the job over. But at this point, right now in 2022, Joe, this is Mac Jones' football team. He's not worried about a guy stepping on his heels. He's not worried about being careful and showing out. At this point, he's comfortable. He's confident. This is his role. This is his team. He can push the ball down the field more. He can take a little bit more chances. He can kind of push his luck with the football without having to worry, oh, shoot, is another quarterback going to take my job? But we're definitely going to see a lot more splash plays down the field. The Patriots didn't do much in free agency, but if you look at free agency, you look at specifically the draft, one thing they wanted to do was add speed. They did that with Tyquan Thornton, the fastest receiver in this draft, running a 4.28, fourth fastest since 2006. You obviously have Nelson Aguilar is going to be a big part of that. Seventh round pick, speedster from the 2021 draft, Trey Nixon. He's been showing out big time so far throughout minicamp, OTAs, and just so far this offseason. So I'm definitely expecting this, offensive passing game to definitely take that leap forward. Even not even just with the receivers, but even with the tight end. Johnny Smith has showed out pretty well here too.
So again, similar to the other teams that we've been looking at, Kansas City Chiefs, there's no clear-cut wide receiver one, and many other teams that have some uncertainty. Who is the wide receiver one? Is it Parker? Is it going to be Jacoby Myers? I kind of like that connection there with Jacoby Myers. Who's it going to be? Who's the wide receiver one right now at a quick glance? Again, looking at last year, Jacoby was the number one target with 126 targets, 83 receptions. Is he still going to be the one?
I mean, I would say it really depends on what you define as your wide receiver one. If you want to talk about receptions by the end of the season, I think
Volume.
that guy's going to be Jacoby. But I think if you're talking about yards overall, I'm slotting Kendrick Bourne right into that role. I mean, Kendrick Bourne started off slow last year, but mid-season and beyond, he really picked it up, and he actually missed a couple of games there in the season. If he didn't miss a game, I firmly believe that Kendrick Bourne would have surpassed Jacoby Myers in yards and would have been very close to a 1,000 yard season. Now that they already have that connection, Mac Jones, Kendrick Bourne, I really think that is going to be the guy that shows out the most at the end of the season with the most yards and becomes your wide receiver one for sure, whether it's in the short to intermediate route or, very quietly being a good deep threat. I'm expecting Kendrick Bourne to end up at the end of the season, statistically, be that wide receiver one for you.
What about Parker there? Is he going to be a bit of a pest in regards to fantasy? Because again, there's some, and are they going to spread the ball around?
Yeah, I mean, of course they're going to spread the ball around. That's the Patriots system. I will say this is going to be a new offensive scheme from what we're hearing. Not even using a fullback anymore. The run game might be kind of switched up from what we've seen, which I don't necessarily agree with. But as for Devontae Parker, it's going to depend on his health. Devontae Parker has not been able to stay healthy except for one season throughout his entire NFL career. But it seems like a lot of times those guys come to New England and that just magically doesn't become an issue anymore. Example, Hunter Henry this past season. So it really, to me, just depends on if he's going to be able to stay healthy. But Devontae Parker has been showing out really well throughout camp. He's been everything so far that N'Keal Harry was supposed to be. And the Patriots finally get that X receiver, that big body guy on the outside that Mac Jones can just comfortably loft the ball up to and come down with it in 50-50 potential ball catches.
I'm looking at tight end, 75 targets for Hunter Henry. Should that go up this year? Is he going to rely on his tight ends, and Hunter? Who's the one there? And is he going to rely on them a bit more? Because I don't see a huge amount of volume going their way. 75 targets last year for Henry. Had 45. Who is the one there at tight end? And will that continue, get bigger this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mac Jones is more so when it comes to volume-wise, is going to more so rely on these receivers. And of course, you're still going to be big on the running game. So, I don't expect anything crazy from these tight ends. I'm not expecting 1,000-yard receiving yards from either of these guys. I think these tight ends are really here for once you start hitting the red zone. You know what I'm saying? When you're trying to punch the ball in at this point, you're 20, 30 yards out. And that's exactly what we saw last season. That number one guy to me is still going to be Hunter Henry. I'm expecting a lot more volume from Jonnu Smith. I'm expecting him to be more involved. And we didn't really see too much two tight end sets, especially they didn't really get to utilize it because Jonnu Smith just did not know the system. And he came out and he said it, even at the end of the season, he didn't know the system pretty much all of this 2021 season, but he's been here even during the optional OTAs and he's showing out. So I do expect Jonnu Smith to have a lot more value for the Patriots this season, especially in receiving yards. But if we're talking about number one guy, that's still going to be Hunter Henry. It's going to be more so in the red zone, though, like I said. I mean, last year, you look at it, there was games where Hunter Henry was putting 2-3 touchdowns up, but, he wasn't necessarily putting up 100 yards or more. It's just because when you get in the red zone, you're trying to punch it in, Mac Jones is looking for that biggest guy that he can go to. Who's that biggest guy he can go to? It's going to be your tight ends and Hunter Henry. So yards-wise, not expecting a lot. Touchdown-wise, I'm expecting them to get a good amount of volume.
See, I'm not excited. Like if we were talking Bengals right now, I could tell you Mixon's going to get the volume of the carries.
Yeah.
And Jamar Chase is the wide receiver one. I'm not seeing it here. This is why I'm completely turned off. Even for you, who studies the team can't really clearly tell me. You could say, well, yeah, Kendrick Bourne could shine, this and that, but I'm not seeing any clarity on a clear-cut one. And I don't think anyone expects to know that answer. It's just that's why I'm staying away. These are the type of scenarios I stay away from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's very few Patriots players that I would pick up in fantasy. And honestly, I mean, we're looking at the first couple of rounds. There's not one guy in the first couple of rounds,
No.
Patriots wise, that I would get. But there are some good sleepers. There are still a couple that can show out for you. But the Patriots also are very dictated on a game to game basis. I mean, Buffalo Bills game last year, for example. Mac Jones threw for less than 100 yards. Only threw like 5 passes, 5 passes. So it's very
Crazy.
dictated on each game.
Who makes these stupid decisions? I mean, again, it's stupid in fantasy. Like, who is the guy saying we're going to screw fantasy teams? We don't need a Jonathan Taylor. We don't need a Derrick Henry. We're just going to, throw crap at the wall and see what sticks. I hate who is the mastermind behind this? Because I want to curse at him in person.
I would say it's mainly Bill Belichick, but offensively, I mean,
I'm writing this down.
he was really giving the reins to Josh McDaniels though at that time. That offensive play calling was mainly Josh McDaniels. Bill Belichick is going to have a big say offensively this year, and like I said, things are expected to change, pretty drastically with the offensive scheme this year. So we could see if that's going to benefit or not, but I don't expect him to all of a sudden stop game planning, game to game, weather to weather.
So it's Bill the bully, pretty much. That's
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
I
That's the
don't
best.
like
That's the best way to put it.
once he goes away. And how many years is that guy left in him as coaching? How many more years do you see this guy, putting away here?
Some people say 2. Some people say 5. I could see. I could see 5, maybe maximum. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he coaches for more. But I'm gonna say 5 max.
How old is this guy? I'm just looking him up here on Wikipedia. The guy is 70 years old. Like, I think it's
He's
time
old.
to throw in the towel here and let someone else come in and give these guys a real run.
As long as he does it at a high level, Joe, I'm okay with it.
As long as he's out there. Listen, so running back real quickly here. I mean, Damien Harris, Stevenson, he was a bit of a split back there. Stevenson started stepping it up there. Who is the one there? And again, touchdowns. It looks like Harris is going to handle all the goal line work number wise, right?
Yeah, I mean, Damon Harris is still going to be your lead running back. We're talking specifically for this 2022 season. I mean, he's going to be showing out, Joe. I mean, I think you can even vouch for this that when guys are in contract year, they're looking for that bag. They seem to play a little extra harder. And Damien Harris has proved himself already, but he's in that contract year. Whether he goes to the Patriots at the end of the season or not, he's looking to get that bag and he's going to want to show out. Yes, the Patriots are still going to split that with Ramondre Stevenson. He's been a big part, but that's not so much to necessarily take away from Damien Harris. That's more so to keep both of these guys fresh. It's
Yeah.
not going to be a situation like it is, let's say, with the Titans, where Derrick Henry is just going to run the ball like a billion times per game, and you're going to see the backup get the ball every so often. It's not going to be a situation like that. But Damien Harris is definitely your number one guy who's gonna push for 1,000 yards and get somewhere within the 800 to 900 yards.
Yeah, it's nothing exciting. 202 attempts last year, and then I think 133 to Stevenson. But you don't think do you think Stevenson steps up a bit more this year? It's similar, probably similar to last year, right?
I would say similar to last year. If the Patriots start to go kind of, I would say not so much north to south, but kind of east to west, I would expect a lot more from Ramondre Stevenson specifically. He's a lot more, north to west and kind of running through the perimeter rather than running up the gut and through the middle of the offensive line. That's kind of more Damien Harris's role. But, I expect around the same. I would expect a little bit more from Ramondre Stevenson as long as he can stay healthy. But keep in mind, you have Pierre Strong now. You have James White coming back. So that volume for him, I think, isn't going to go up too much. It's going to stay around the same. But I wouldn't expect a fall off here for Damien Harris specifically.
I should just put on the thumbnail of this Patriots Outlook, stay away for fantasy. That's what the title should be.
If you can get Damien Harris like in the mid round, I mean, I think that's it's a pretty good pickup. It's not a guy you're going to want to pick up in rounds, 1 or 2 or anything like that. But if he's there in the mid rounds, definitely a good pickup. There were several games last year where he was rushing for over 100 yards a game and several touchdowns.
I'm looking at it right now, especially for maybe DFS if you play daily fantasy. Week 7, 106 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. and he had how about 25.3 PPR points, and then he had that monster game in week 16, 103 rushing yards. He had the 3 rushing touchdowns, 28.3 points. So he had a couple of big ones in there.
Yeah.
So, but then he had a couple of duds like week 3, 3.1
Yeah.
points, week 4, 4.6, 9.8 points, week 5, a 7.5 gamer in week 11. So a bunch of duds in there, but
Unfortunately, I think that's what you're gonna get with all the Patriots players you draft here in fantasy. You're just gonna have those weeks where it's just a dunk. You're gonna
yeah,
have to rely on the other guy on your roster.
maybe a good flex play on some weeks and maybe some DFS. But
Yeah.
Mac Jones, I don't know. I just got this weird, not weird, but this warm and fuzzy feeling. I think he's going to be a safe quarterback, and I think he's going to improve on last year. Like you kind of confirmed my intuition there. I think.
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot from Mac Jones. I mean, he's looking confident. He's been working out. He actually slimmed down a lot this offseason, put on some muscle. So, I mean, the velocity on the ball, even his arm strength looks a lot better. I'm not saying it's Josh Allen, but it's definitely a big difference from what we saw last year. So I'm very excited.
All right, and finally, 2 more things. Do you have any inside information on the team? Any type of like what I tell people is like, is there any inside stuff going on? Is Mac Jones having dinner with any of these guys on the side, or any inside special handshakes going on? Any inside information that maybe we might not know that you might know?
I mean, Mac Jones has handshakes with a lot of different guys. I would say more specifically Kendrick Bourne. I mean, him and Kendrick Bourne really do have just like this brother to brother connection. If you haven't seen Kendrick Bourne's YouTube channel, I would highly check that out if you're trying to see exactly what I'm talking about between that connection. I mean, even in practice, a big play happens. These guys are always dabbing each other up and have their own specific handshakes. But it was actually around the draft time. Mac Jones actually hosted a big dinner for everyone, and you had who'd you have? You had like Christian Barmore from the defensive line. You had Kendrick Bourne there. You had Jonnu Smith there. You had Hunter Henry there. He had all his receivers there. His running backs. He had Damien Harris there. So they're definitely keeping in touch. They had some throwing sessions together this offseason already. You know, Jacoby Myers was there. Devontae Parker was even there right after he was traded. Nelson Aguilar was there. So these guys are definitely linking up this offseason, even when it isn't a specific practice at Gillette Stadium.
Well, good to know. And finally, how do you guys think you'll finish? Now, again, this division, it seems clear cut that Buffalo is going to be number 1, but how does this play out? And on paper, man, I'm not sleeping on like teams like the Jets this year, man. They actually look good on paper. I know I never thought I'd say that. I think Brees Hall could be a beast, and they got some good receivers now. Who is it this year? Who's going to win this division?
Yeah, so I mean, look, unfortunately for Jets fans, if I had to rank this, I'm still going to say Jets fans go down. I do 100% agree with you. I don't think that they're going to be the Jets team that we saw the last several years where they're winning like 4 games.
Yeah.
I do expect them to be better, and I expect them to start pushing the limits for this division. It's going to only make it harder because I think they did definitely get better this offseason, 100%. Buffalo, I think, takes it. Buffalo easily takes it. They beat us last year. It was close, but they beat us. We arguably got worse, losing a lot of big pieces. And then obviously this division only got better. The Dolphins got better. The Bills big time got better. So I don't think at this point the Patriots are really pushing to win the division and take that number 1 spot. I think they're actually pushing to take that number 2 spot with the Dolphins. You know, so if I had to argue, it would be Bills, Patriots, and Dolphins pushing for number 2, and then the Jets are going to be somewhere at the bottom.
Yeah, I feel the same way as well. Now, the biggest it factor for all these teams has been the quarterback. You don't get a good franchise quarterback, you're not going anywhere. You know, it's just that's what we've been talking. Every beat writer is agreeing. Like, you can't win in the NFL. Like, you can't go deep unless you've got that franchise quarterback. And I think you guys have it. And I think because there's these borderline quarterbacks now, like Davis Mills, like who the hell knows them? Tua, we don't know. Justin Fields, no clue in hell. Zach
Exactly.
Wilson, have no idea. It's going to be like a make or break year for a lot. Drew Lock, like, man, come on. Like, a lot of question marks at quarterback, but then you've got Jones, and I think you've got something. He isn't like, I don't think he's the next Herbert. I don't think he's on that level as Allen, but I think he's really good. I think he can continue to slow and steady grow a guy like Mac Jones and take you guys to promised land eventually. You know, I really
Yeah.
think
I mean, for sure. He's not a guy that is again, like you said, he's not your Josh Allen, he's not your Justin Herbert. These are guys we're talking about that have just a God-given physical talent. And Mac
yeah,
Jones has physical talent, but where he's going to strive is his IQ, is going to be his mind. He's very, very smart. He knows where to put the ball. He knows when to throw the ball. He knows when to, throw the ball away. He knows how to take care of the ball. He's so smart, and that's what separates him from the rest of the quarterbacks. And honestly, you don't see that many quarterbacks that are where they are today because of just how smart they are. And look, I mean, you look at Tom Brady from the start of his career to the end of his career, and I'm not trying to compare Mac Jones to Tom Brady here, but, physically to start, Tom Brady is nothing close to what he is now. He's improved so much on his arm strength and whatnot. So you can definitely improve on those things. But I mean, at the end of the day, your intelligence are your intelligence. So I'm definitely happy that we have a quarterback that is just as brilliant as Mac Jones is.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Colby, being on. You guys, go follow Patriots Global on YouTube. And we appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks for diving into a team that, we probably won't be touching for fantasy.
Probably not. Probably just your couple players, maybe Kendrick Bourne, maybe like your backup quarterback, Mac Jones, maybe late in the round if you can stash Hunter Henry or Damien Harris. I think those are probably the players to go ahead and grab. But other than that, there's probably not too much guys you want to grab here.
Couple sleepers there for you right there. And when Belichick's gone, maybe it's a totally different conversation. We'll
probably
retires, which is hopefully soon. All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Follow the whole Impact series below. Subscribe and go follow Patriots Global, guys. We're out.